How do you make $1 million on LinkedIn? Well, somebody asked me this question after in my slides, I told them that, I make about $1 million a year of new business from LinkedIn. And they were like, how? And it's funny because when they asked me that, there was a degree of skepticism in their voice because, marketing bullshit that we all hear every day. But they couldn't comprehend looking at my content impressions and then looking at one of the influencers they know, looking at my follower count. They couldn't correlate the fact that the influencer they know with 157,000 followers was making about 100 grand a year. Yet I had half their follower count, half the engagement, or even a quarter of their engagement, and I was making more. And they couldn't square those two positions. How can somebody with more followers, more engagement, make less money than somebody with less followers and less engagement? And so I thought I'd devote an episode to talking about how this works. Now, I'm not going to go into the usual things that I would say is, impressions and followers don't mean, money in the bank. And it's true, of course. But I wanted to talk about the big mistake and then map out how I get my $1 million in revenue so you can see where it comes from. So the big mistake people make is they think that there's two camps on LinkedIn. They think there's outbound messaging and content, and they see them as two separate things. So you're either posting content to get clients or you're outbound messaging to get clients. And there's a fundamental mistake is that those two things actually work better together. If you're just posting content, you're putting it all into the hands of other people. And if you're just outbound messaging, you're building no trust first, building no awareness first, so it's a hard slog. So what I did is I put the two things together. So my content creates the conversations or gives me an opportunity to start conversations. It's a conversation driver. So if I walk through some economics of making $1 million, if you want to make $1 million a year, you really have to know what your economics are. By that, I mean, where's that money going to come from? In your head, in your plan, you need to know where that's going to come from. How am I going to get there? And if your plan to get there is a $500 product or service, good luck, that's a hell of a job. Now, I've got one thing I'm primarily selling on LinkedIn, and I have three different versions of it. I have the Social Selling Accelerator. It has a group coaching version, a one-to-one group coaching and supported version, some back office support from people on content messaging and all that kind of stuff, and then a one-to-one with me. The one-to-one with me is the most expensive. It's about $14,000 for that. Group one is $1,500. So there's something for different budgets there and people who've got different paces and wants more help. Now, me trying to make $1 million with my lowest ticket offer at, $1,500, it's going to take me hundreds and hundreds of clients to actually make that $1 million. But if I get 3 or 4 one-to-one clients and some middle tier offer and some lower tier offer, I'm done. Yeah. And this is it. Now, I do get corporate work, and that's obviously a big chunk of money, but they're not as voluminous as the accelerator. So I have an offer stack that economically ties up that I don't need a lot of clients to make $1 million. That means my effort to get that $1 million is not hard. Yeah. And if I get a whole load of inbound, if I get people messaging me saying, hey, we've got this budget for training and can you, train our sales team of 100 people, and I make 80 grand doing it, brilliant. But I don't rely on that stuff, even though I do that all day long. So I've got an offer stack that makes sense. And I know I need four one-to-ones and a mix of cores and pros, which are the lower tiers. So I've mapped out my economics and it works. It stacks up without me needing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. I wouldn't be able to service hundreds and hundreds of clients anyway. And I'd be working like a dog. So that's number one. The economics have to be right. So I have to have something high ticket so that I'm not flogging myself and I'm not needing volume. Because if I need volume, I have to throw more at the kitchen sink. Or throw the kitchen sink at it. So my economics have to be right. Then I need a path to clients. Now, I am a little crazy because I operate multiple paths. But when I'm working with a client, I tell them to do one because most clients don't need $1 million in revenue. But actually in real life, I'm doing 4. So the 4 paths that I'm doing, number 1, I'm doing LinkedIn newsletters, and that builds deep, deep trust, and I make offers in my newsletter. So that's a big one. Now, remember I said about getting people using content to start conversations. Even with my LinkedIn and email newsletter, I am starting conversations with those people who subscribe, those people who engage, those people who support. Do they all convert? No. But I never actually pitch. I just start conversations. And that means that I'm not burning opportunity or burning relationships by trying to just pitch my services. I'll go on a call with them, chat to them. If they're a fit, obviously, I'm not going to just go on calls with everybody. But if I see somebody engaging with my newsletter, subscribing to my newsletter, and they look like a fit for my program, I'm going to interact with them, have a conversation, hopefully get on a call with them, talk through what they're doing. And if there's an opportunity, share my program. That's the first thing I'm doing. Yeah. So newsletter. Yeah. So I'm running that. Again, I wouldn't advise you to try and do all 4 of these all in one go. I do one because one will make you plenty of money, but I do all 4 because I've got a team of 30 people. I've got a pipeline to feed. I've got all of those things that, a lot of people don't have. So newsletters is the big one. Then I have hyper-targeted prospecting or hyper-targeted outreach. So this is a small number of very focused, very targeted messages, not to complete strangers. And I spend time getting those right, like a sniper approach to messaging. Now, I get about 22% meeting booking rate on those. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Some of my team actually do better at it than me because they do more of them, but I'll do about 5 of those messages a day. So 5 messages a day. I'm getting 1 meeting per day. So that's 5. And I'm converting about 30%. So I'm getting 1 to 2 clients a week from just doing that. And again, I'm under 20 clients and I'm done, right? So I'm getting 1 to 2 clients every week just doing hyper-targeted. Next, I'm doing LinkedIn events. And this is the big one. This is the whale. So this brings me roughly about 2,000 to 3,000 leads a month. And I get people coming, they build massive trust up front, give loads of helpful advice. And because what I do is not, I'm going to teach you how to use LinkedIn. What I'm trying to do is help you build pipeline with LinkedIn, build a business with LinkedIn. So the big thing is not learning, it's implementation. Because a lot of people will consume and consume and consume and never do it. And so my job is to actually help them do it, which is the scary end of kind of social selling training, because that's where you get into the messy bits, which most of my competitors will avoid because it's messy. When you get involved with somebody's business and you start saying, well, your offer's not good enough, or you're actually overthinking, or you're not doing the work, that's where it's the messy end of the industry. And I decided to go there because most people buy courses and never do them. And I didn't want to do that. So the events are a big piece for me. So last week was a good one. I had about 900 people come to it. Normally it's about 400 or 500 people, but I do that every single week. Give loads of value around an intent topic. And this is really important because you'll notice I'm using content to start conversations. So I use the content to start the conversations. Newsletter, webinar, or LinkedIn Live, even the hyper-targeted outreach has content in it to help them. So I'm doing those things, and the content is always geared around the intent of a buyer. So what I mean by that is people have motivations for why they buy my services. And I've mapped out what those reasons are. And so I put all of my content, my newsletter, my events, my outreach around those reasons, those specific reasons. I don't mean I want more clients. I mean specific challenges they might have. All of my content circles those things. And so by circling those intent topics, the topics where people are going, perfect fit almost, their need aligns with what I do, I am making it easier to draw people who'll convert. So intent content or intent is about understanding the people and understanding your offer and making a message around it. So high intent audience gives you a message which resonates. And then my offer obviously has to all link together. If I'm talking about things that don't directly connect to my offer, I can amass a crowd of people that won't convert. And this is a common thing in the content creator industry, that people will post things that are good, helpful, people love them, but they're not linked to a buying motivation. And so what happens is they amass an audience who appreciates them, but has no desire or motivation to buy anything. So it can deceive you into thinking this person's really successful because they have bought a huge audience, but actually that audience isn't motivated to buy. And so actually their conversion rate on that audience is really low. Whereas my conversion rate is very, very high, even though I don't get as big an audience because I'm not appealing to the people who don't resonate with what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to help them with. So just to recap, LinkedIn newsletter, I do that every week. Then I've got my hyper-targeted outreach, 5 messages a day. Then I've got my LinkedIn events. That's 2,000 to 3,000 leads a month coming there. Now, the final one is my content, my posting. And this brings me the fewest leads. So I have a couple of quick win campaigns I'll run on a weekly basis. And, they're really simple, one post and a couple of actions. And I shared about those in my webinar on LinkedIn last week. And I'm just doing these things over and over and over and over again. And like I said, I don't need hundreds of clients to get to that $1 million mark. It's like 20. It's 20. The mix of all the different services and different tiers, 20. So my job on LinkedIn is to get those calls in my diary. That's it. If I do that, and roughly it equates to about 60. Yeah. So it's like 3 calls a day. Yeah. 3 calls a day. Now, sometimes that's skewed because if I have a large corporate come to me and they got a big training budget, that can hit me my total in 1 month. But if I'm just going on what I'm doing my thing, it's about 20 customers and I hit $1 million of new business a year. And that's manageable. That's doable. Now, how long does it take me to do those 4 things? Well, the newsletter and the events take me actually the longest. So the LinkedIn newsletter probably takes me about 2 hours a week. Then my LinkedIn events, there's a bit of mechanics there in terms of logistics, but again, probably 2 hours a week. I've got that system kind of nailed. So about 2 hours a week. And then my hyper-targeted outreach, that's again, probably 2.5 hours a week. And then I've got my content, which I kind of really control myself on my content. But again, it's about 2.5 hours a week. So when you kind of stack that up, it's about 9-10 hours a month of work, a week of work to make $1 million. So that's a lot of work if you've got other things to do. But my business is LinkedIn, so it makes it a little easier for me because I'm practicing what I'm preaching at the same time. But 10 hours a week is doable. I would not advise you trying to replicate everything I'm doing day to day, at least initially, because there are some moving parts that for somebody who's never done them before could be a little overwhelming or a little bit confusing. And so learning one part, getting it right, getting it into a habit so you don't even need to think about it becomes important. Like me doing a LinkedIn event now, I can do it on autopilot. I know what I'm doing. I know the logistics of it. I know all of that stuff that has to happen. It's just easy for me. But if you were starting it from scratch, I would not advise you doing it weekly. I'd say do once a month. And what I found, by the way, is pretty much 75% of the business I get from LinkedIn, 75% of it, those people have been to 2 of my LinkedIn events. They may have come from other sources, but typically 3/4 of my revenue from LinkedIn, they've been to at least 2 of my events. Crazy, huh? So how do you make $1 million on LinkedIn in a year? Dead simple. It's got to be content and messaging together. Number 1, don't see them as separate things. Number 2, it's about high intent audiences. Your message has to align with what your offer is and the audience's intent so that you end up with a high converting audience rather than a mass low converting audience. And then pathways, simple, repeatable processes you can follow to start those conversations. And it's 60 conversations, roughly 60 conversations or 60 meetings to get me to my total. 60 meetings, 3 a day. That's it. 3 a day a week, 3 a day, every day, $1 million of revenue. So if you're looking to get started at doing some of this stuff, drop me a message on LinkedIn. If you've got questions about how this stuff works, drop me a message on LinkedIn. But it's not as complicated. It's not as difficult as it has to be. You don't need to obsess about algorithms or, fire out volumes of sales pitches. There's smarter ways. And LinkedIn is really noisy right now. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of AI flooding the feeds. And so you've got to be smarter and use high intent and signal to really cut through all of that so that you're not just chasing your tail. It's crazy some of the things people do to think they need to get clients. I've seen people going, right, I'm engaging an hour before with people and an hour after I post so that I get more reach in the hopes that I get leads. why not just start conversations with the people who are relevant? If you had 2 hours to spend, I could give you a pathway. If you can spend 2 hours engaging with people's comments to improve your reach, I can show you something you can do in 30 minutes a day that will get you more conversations than anything that will do. So it's about picking a path to the result, not kind of, I see this a lot. People go, I want leads. Okay, so I'll post content, and they kind of hope that somehow it'll all come out. It'll all kind of work itself through, that if I post, it'll just automatically get leads, or it doesn't work that way. And, I've done this for years, and I know that algorithms will change, all that kind of stuff will change, but there will still be people who need to know how to get clients. And so my job is to give them predictability and to get them to actually do the work. And once you get into the habit, I think once you wean yourself off the kind of dopamine addiction of posting content and you start to see it as a business channel, you start to really make an impact then, because you're not getting your quick hits from just posting. You're actually getting your hits from making money. And that's the best thing. So when I see people say, here's how to go viral, I ignore that and go, I'm more interested in making money. I'm more interested in getting clients. I'm more interested in helping people and doing what I really love. Sure, would I love to be world famous and every post blows up and goes viral? And sure I would, but I'm more interested in making money and making a difference. So that's how I make $1 million a year, by doing the very things that most creators won't do and don't do.